From the News Channel 5 network, this is Inside Politics.
Hello, everyone. I'm News Channel 5's political analyst Pat Nolan. Welcome to Inside Politics. The COVID-19 virus with its Delta variant continues to spike in numbers across the state of Tennessee, with cases and hospitalizations as high now as they were 6 or 7 months ago during the height of the winter surge. The increase occurs as schools open for the fall semester. Many students, especially those under the age of 12, are not eligible to receive one of the vaccines that have proven to be so important to provide protection from the disease. So should those students returning to class be required to wear a mask? What about teachers, staff, and school visitors? What about wearing them on school buses? Tennessee House Speaker Cameron Sexton believes masks should not be required. In recent days, he has threatened to call a special session of the General Assembly to ban local schools from imposing mask mandates. On Wednesday, the Speaker and all 73 members of the Republican supermajority of the State House signed a letter to Governor Bill Lee asking him to call a special session. The Speaker has also threatened to pass a new school voucher law to allow parents to take their tax dollars out of any school with mask requirements and spend those funds on private education. The Speaker is our guest on Inside Politics this week. Mr. Speaker, thank you for joining us again. We appreciate you being on the show.
Thank you for having me. Great to be here.
There's a report coming out late this week, a radio report here in Nashville, that you are backing away from banning masks in school. Is that right?
No, what I said is I personally don't think that they should mandate masks, but what I do believe is it's a parental choice. The parents should have the choice to decide what's best for the health of their child. The school boards do have the authority in state law. The AG has opined that to us and also legal department. If the schools want to mandate masks, okay, but then parents should have an option to opt out or have other choices at their disposal if they disagree with that decision. It's ultimately, in my mind, a parental decision.
So you'd still like a special session. What kind of choices do you think the legislature ought to provide by law?
Well, we'll see. I mean, that's the thing. If we get a special session, you start getting together and you work out some legislation. The letter simply outlined the things that we want to discuss. It didn't say that that's what the call will be, just things that we're hearing from the public that we like to address. And by the way, I know in the early segment you said that I said I would call for a special session. That's not what I said. I said I would ask the governor for a special session.
Well, the legislature can call one on their own if they want to, but you have to get 2/3 of the members to do that. You've got more than 2/3 of the members in the House. Will you go ahead and try to call a special session if you can, if you get the Senate to go along, if the governor says no?
Right. Well, I can't call a special session from just 2/3 of the House. It does require 2/3 of the Senate. So you need 2/3 of both, or you need the governor to call. At the press conference where I said I would ask the governor for a special session.
You mentioned that you would like to have options. One of those options might be allowing the mask to be optional, but this particular virus and this variant is so contagious. Would that provide any protection at all for people? Because a lot of people will probably not a lot of students would not wear masks if it was optional.
Well, what I said is it should be the parental choice if they think their child should wear a mask or not. I think the decision should be ultimately left up to the parents to make that choice. It's their child. They should know the health of that child the best. And that's what I think should happen.
Mask wearing is an issue all across the country. I heard an interview with a school administrator in Texas this week. She said she just couldn't live with herself if a student died on her watch and they weren't allowed to have masks in the school. There was not a mask mandate there. Whatever happens, if they pass this bill, you give these kind of choices and students die because they're exposed to this virus in schools. Will you be able to live with those consequences?
Well, I think what we do know is 99.9996% of the kids younger than 20, that's their survival rate. We do know that the leading causes of death, there's respiratory illnesses for kids under 20, that's like number 9. You have suicide, that's number 5. There's reports in the Wall Street Journal that we need to examine the long-term effects of wearing the mask. I do not think that this is going to be the only year that the masks are going to try to be mandated, because this virus is not going away. It's not going to have enough people vaccinated, especially in children. And so this may be happening for the next 5 to 10 years. And the question really needs to be about, is this what we want to do for the next 5 or 10 years, have our kids wear masks? And if we do, what's the long-term consequences of that?
You mentioned you'd like to have this special session. You have a lot of things that were in that letter that at least mentioned. We want to talk about some of those. Most people seem, at least the health experts, seem to think that the only way to get rid of this, or at least bring it under some control, is to have more people get vaccinated. I don't see anything in your letter that even talks about getting more shots in people's arms in the special session. Why is that not in your special session call, at least even mentioned as a topic?
Well, I mean, I think people need to make that decision for themselves. I'm not for government telling people what they need and don't need to do, whether or not to get a vaccination. I don't think the CDC or the news media has done any favors either. I think what really needs to happen is the families in Tennessee, the adults, the parents need to have a conversation with their physicians, with their pharmacists, with their healthcare providers about their own healthcare and about if a vaccination works for them. It's not up to the government to tell them what to do or not to do. They need to have that conversation with their healthcare expert.
The face mask bill that maybe you talked about up in the legislature, would you see it applying not only to just K through 12 schools? Would it also apply to state colleges and universities? Would it apply to private schools and universities? These options for parents?
There's a lot of discussion out there about that from different members. All we're addressing is what's in the letter. Let's have a conversation and a discussion. The big right now is around K through 12. There are some members who are concerned about what's happening in higher education. When you do look at the data for people between the ages of 0 to 20, the hospitalization for number of cases is less than 2%. The mortality rate for that group is even less than that. As I said, the survival rate is 99.996%. So I think those are discussions to be had, but I also think you need to look at the data and what that shows as far as the risk to hospitalizations and the mortality numbers.
There's only a small number of counties in Tennessee that are asking or mandating masks at this point. Is that worth it to have a special session of the legislature? They're pretty expensive.
Well, I think there's other things out there too. So you're only wanting to talk about masks as the issue. We have independent health departments in Shelby County.
Oh, we'll get to those. I have questions about that.
But you asked the question, is imposing mask mandates on private schools, which I don't think is in their jurisdiction. The independent health department, 6 of them, should not be making those decisions. That should be left to the school or to the school board.
And
if the school board wants to do that.
To be clear to our audience, that's only happened in Shelby County. That's not happened in Davidson County. And has it happened in other independent health boards?
Not yet, but they have the capability to do that. But they also impose countywide mask mandates on businesses as well, which I think if I was a business, I'd be mad if the health department imposed something on me. And so what I would say, though, what Metro school systems have done is put an offense for reckless endangerment if a student doesn't wear a mask to a school.
Do you see mask wearing as a major contributor to the learning lag that we're seeing, the learning decline that's been going on in schools? And what hard evidence do you have to show that that's the case?
I think there's many things to learning loss in their schools. I think, wearing a mask could lead to that. Because you could have more anxiety, you could have other things. But I think schools being shut down, I think schools being a hybrid plan and not having in-person learning. It's interesting that last year schools said that they couldn't have in-person learning, some of them, but now this year they can. So wearing a mask.
Tennessee House Speaker Cameron Sexton is our guest on Inside Politics. We're talking about masks in schools and the other things that may come up in a special session of the legislature if the governor calls one. Back to continue our conversation with the speaker after this break.